My parents bought my brother a new laptop for college. I got stuck with Dad's broken PC. Mom said, "Be thankful." I repaired it in silence. A week later, they showed up at my tech company demanding, "If you ever want to figure out how much you matter in your family, just wait until there's something worth dividing up." For me, that moment came with a college laptop. My brother, Ethan, got a brand new, high-end MacBook Pro loaded with Adobe Suite, Final Cut Pro, and even a custom engraving that read, "Go change the world, Ethan." My parents basically treated it like some grand unveiling. Mom snapped photos of him unboxing it like he was bringing home a newborn, while Dad nodded along with that same serious pride he usually reserved for his grill when it nailed a perfect steak. Me? I was handed Dad's old desktop. And when I say old, I mean ancient. I'm pretty sure the last time it powered up, YouTube was still running on 5-star ratings. It came with a thick coat of dust, a wheezing fan that sounded like it was gasping its last breath, and a sticky note slapped on the monitor that read, "Use grateful eyes." That was Mom's way of encouraging me. "Be grateful," she said, smiling the way a movie villain does after cutting the brakes on your car. I didn't argue. I just dragged it into my room. By then I already knew that reacting was a trap. If you complained, you were ungrateful. If you accepted it, you were resilient. But if you quietly pulled off something impressive, that's when they started panicking. I didn't have Ethan's shine. Number 4. 2 GPA. No blinding leadership potential that apparently made my parents forget I even existed. What I did have was curiosity, a restless, sometimes unhealthy urge to figure out how things worked, especially when they were broken. So while Ethan marched off to college with his shiny silver laptop and his built-in fan club, I stayed behind cracking open a PC case that looked like it was held together with prayers and dried ketchup. Inside was pure chaos, loose wires hanging like jungle vines, a busted power supply, and a motherboard that looked like it had survived the Great Depression. But I also saw opportunity. Fixing broken things, especially the ones everyone else had written off, had sort of become my thing. I dove into old forums, ancient YouTube repair tutorials, and half-dead Reddit threads. I scavenged parts from garage sale towers, patched together a boot system, and rigged up a cooling fan using a cheap desk fan from the dollar store and glue left over from my 8th grade science project. And little by little, like some low-budget Frankenstein experiment, the machine sputtered to life. It was ugly, it was slow, but it was mine. While Ethan uploaded selfies from his dorm with captions like, "Work hard, play hard laptop coffee vibes," I was holed up in the basement piecing together something that would quietly shift the direction of my life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This wasn't just about a beat-up desktop. This was about everything that led me there. Like birthdays where Ethan unwrapped AirPods and I unwrapped socks. Or family dinners where the conversation revolved around his lectures while no one even checked if I was breathing. Or the time my science project got picked for regionals and my parents brushed it off with a cool before asking if I'd seen Ethan's latest economics paper. I wasn't the black sheep. I was the invisible one. At some point, I stopped caring if they saw me at all and started carving out a world where their attention didn't matter. And that old desktop was the first spark. A week after I got it running, I ended up turning it into something entirely different. A prototype. An idea. Something I'd been sketching in notebooks for months, but never had the hardware to test. A modular desktop unit with an open framework, built to handle cheap replacement parts. Think of it like if a Raspberry Pi had a baby with a Swiss Army knife. I didn't know if it would succeed, but I knew I couldn't stop. So I pushed on. Late nights fueled by energy drinks. Coding in the dark while my parents watched TV upstairs assuming I was just gaming. Soldering boards by hand with shaky fingers and a cracked eBay soldering pen. Sketching diagrams on the backs of junk mail envelopes. Backing up files onto 5 different USB drives because I half expected the system to combust. Somewhere in there, Ethan called once just to brag about his dorm suite and the lattes from his student lounge. I just said, cool. He never asked what I was working on. Nobody did. And honestly, maybe that was the best thing about it. When no one's paying attention, there's nobody standing in your way telling you what can't be done. What would later become a startup didn't start with that intention at all. It started as a simple repair. Then it became an upgrade. Then it grew into a prototype that I tossed onto a text subreddit under an anonymous account, just to see if anyone out there gave a damn. Turns out, they did. One retired engineer replied, "If you build this into a kit, I'll take 5." Another person wrote, "Where can I donate to make this happen?" I didn't even have a name for the project yet. But I had something far more powerful, momentum. And all of it traced back to that ancient, gasping computer my mom handed me like it was a punishment. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just tinkering with forgotten hardware. I was rewriting the whole system. The post wasn't supposed to blow up. It was 3 in the morning, and I was still buzzing from finally getting my Frankenstein machine to boot without the fan making noises like a raccoon dying in the walls. I snapped a picture of the build on my desk, a jumble of recycled parts, zip ties, and scraps of paper taped to the case like the ramblings of a mad scientist. The caption read, "Rebuilt my dad's 2006 Office PC into a modular, reparable desktop. Booted Linux in under 5 minutes. Runs clean. Feels strangely personal." I added a handful of photos. Nothing flashy. No clickbait. No desperate plea for upvotes. Just hit post and went to bed. The next morning I woke up to 6,000 upvotes. By lunch it had jumped to 17,000. By dinner, my inbox was stacked with messages from engineers, hobbyists, and even a guy working at a nonprofit in Detroit that taught kids to code. He asked if I'd consider shaping the idea into something students could actually build out of scrap hardware. That one stuck with me, because suddenly it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who had ever been handed the leftovers, the junk, the be grateful scraps, while someone else in the family got all the shiny new stuff. My messages kept piling up. People sent advice, wiring diagrams, even offers to test builds. One guy said he could ship me parts from his company's discarded stockpile. Another asked if I'd thought about running a Kickstarter. Meanwhile, upstairs, my parents were bickering about which Netflix password still worked. They didn't notice I was barely sleeping, skipping dinner, and vanishing into the garage to solder until my fingers shook. Ethan called again, this time because he couldn't remember the family Hulu login. "Hey, do you still live at home?" he asked, like it barely crossed his mind. "Yeah," I said. He laughed. "That sucks." Then hung up. I didn't bother answering back. By then, I had prototype V2 sitting on the table. Slimmer, quieter, easier to put together. I'd scrounged parts off eBay, hit up local shops, and even traded repairs with a guy in town who swapped me a broken projector for components I needed. My room looked like a junkyard, except I wasn't burying tech. I was reviving it. I didn't have a business plan, but I finally had a name. Recore. Built from scraps. Made to last. It felt solid. No venture capital. No glossy logo. Just the belief that you could create something real out of what most people threw away. I bought a domain for $12. Put together a bare-bones page with some instructions, a rough description, and a contact form. Then I made a second Reddit post linking to it. That one went nuclear. Not just on Reddit, on tech forums, Discord servers, Facebook groups. A mod even DM'd me, "Are you aware this hit Hacker News? You're kind of blowing up, dude." I hadn't been. But I realized quick when the first bulk request hit my inbox. "Could you supply 20 to 25 kits each month for a community learning program? We have funding available." Funding? As in actual money? I pulled up the spreadsheet where I'd been tracking suppliers and parts and started running the math. And the crazy part was, I could pull it off. If I streamlined the parts list, automated some printing, maybe outsourced laser cut panels to a shop nearby, I could actually meet that demand. I didn't need some TV investor. I just needed to keep building. All I really needed was Wi-Fi and enough desk space to crank out 5 units at once. So I gutted the garage, sold off my childhood bike, my half-dead Xbox, even a coin collection Dad had written off as worthless years ago. I shoved the lawn tools into a corner, folded up the chairs, and set down a flimsy plastic table I'd picked up on clearance. And just like that, Recore HQ was born, 15 feet from the fridge Mom kept stocked for Ethan's visits home. Nobody in my house seemed to notice. Not the shipping boxes piling up at the door, not the 3D printed casings stacked on the laundry shelf, not the solder smoke drifting upstairs, not even the daily runs I made to the post office with kits wrapped in brown paper. Ethan was too busy playing family champion. Dad bragged about his Dean's List status to anyone who would listen, conveniently ignoring the fact that Ethan only scraped through economics by copying homework all semester. I knew the truth. I'd seen the messages. But I kept my mouth shut. I had 20 new orders to finish, an engineer in Germany helping me refine my cooling system, and a call lined up with an Arizona school district looking to pilot Recore in 3 classrooms. The kid who once got handed the broken PC was quietly building something none of them could wrap their heads around. Still, a part of me wondered, when would they finally see it? When would the same people who told me to be grateful realize they'd handed me a spark? They'd find out eventually, just not in the way they expected. It wasn't a holiday or anything. Ethan just rolled in one Friday night with 3 duffel bags, a Bluetooth speaker, and that smug grin like he owned the place. Mom practically teared up on the spot, hugging him like he'd come back from war. "Look at you," she gushed. "How's the dorm? How's college? Are your professors treating you well?" Dad grinned from the couch, already queuing up ESPN 4 for bonding time. Nobody asked why he'd come home without warning. Nobody questioned why his fancy laptop was missing. But I noticed. I notice everything. More importantly, I noticed what he noticed. Because Ethan, bless his barely there GPA, has never been subtle. The first time he passed the garage, he froze. His eyes darted to the tables, the stacked kits, the boxes labeled Recore, Batch Week 4. He saw the soldering irons, the whiteboard covered in code and diagrams. He lingered in the doorway like he wasn't sure if this was still a garage or some kind of tech lab. "You building stuff?" he asked. I didn't even bother looking up. "Yeah," he scoffed. "Okay, Mr. Elon." Then walked off like I'd just said I was painting rocks. But the seed had been planted. All weekend he kept circling, sneaking glances, picking up tools he couldn't name. At dinner, Mom laid it on thick, asking him about school. "How are your professors?" "Oh, they love Ethan," Dad cut in. "One told him he has leadership in his blood." I nearly choked on spaghetti. Ethan smirked, playing it cool. "Yeah, I might be moving into a mentorship role." Meanwhile, I had shipped 32 kits that week. Recore was being tested in 2 classrooms. A tech blog had reached out for an interview. Yet no one asked me a damn thing. Not once. Until Sunday afternoon. I came back from the post office, arms full of return receipts, and found Ethan in my chair. At my desk, using my PC. He spun lazily, like some cartoon villain. "Your website's clean," he said, tapping the screen. "A little basic, but it loads quick." I stared him down. "Why are you touching my stuff?" "Relax," he said. "I was just curious. Didn't know you were running a whole startup in here." Mom and Dad don't know either, by the way. He tossed it out like a joke, but his eyes told the real story. For the first time, Ethan looked rattled. And it didn't suit him. He was used to being the one everyone applauded just for showing up. But now, he was sitting in my garage, using my Wi-Fi. He was clicking through a website I'd coded from the ground up, while he'd been sipping chai lattes at his campus Starbucks. "What do you want, Ethan?" I asked. He shrugged like it was casual. "Just saying, if this thing takes off, maybe loop me in. Could be fun to collaborate." "Collaborate?" I blinked. "Yeah, you know," he continued. "You handle all the nerdy building stuff, and I'll do the pitching. Get some investors on board. Polish it up. Get it on shelves." I just stared at him. This was the same guy who couldn't format a Word doc without freezing the computer. He once called an HDMI cable the setting. And now he thought he was going to pitch my company? I didn't even bother arguing. I didn't need to. Because 2 days later, Recore got featured in a newsletter run by a guy who used to work at MIT. That link spread. It got reposted, picked up by a junior tech journalist, and then that journalist DM'd me for a quick call. That quick call, it turned into a full-on article. Headline: "This team turned scrap into a startup that could disrupt the DIY PC industry." It dropped on a Wednesday. By Thursday, Recore's waitlist had 200 names. By Friday, I was sold out. And by Saturday morning, I was trending. Not globally, but in tech spaces. People were suddenly buzzing about that kid with the modular build kits. That's when things shifted at home. Mom stood in the hallway frowning at her phone. "Do you know someone named Chris Tenner?" I froze. "Why?" "He emailed the family account, asking if he could set up a video interview with you about Recore." "What even is that?" I exhaled. "It's my company." "You have a company?" Dad leaned out from the living room. "Hold on, are you in trouble?" Ethan, sprawled on the couch, arms folded, muttered, "He's not in trouble. He's blowing up." That's when Mom hit me with the look. The "why didn't you tell us" look. As if they'd ever carved out space for me to share anything that wasn't about Ethan or matching bathroom towels. I just shrugged. "You told me to be grateful." And I was. Grateful for the quiet. Grateful for being overlooked. Grateful enough to never need your help again. But it didn't end there. A couple of days later, Mom showed up leaning against the garage doorway like she'd only just discovered it existed. We were just talking, she said. You really ought to think about incorporating, protect yourself legally. Dad jumped in. We could help, you know. We've got experience. Experience? This from the man who once tried to launch a pressure washing business and nearly blasted the neighbor's cat into orbit. I nodded politely. I'm already working with someone on that. You are? Mom's voice shot up like I'd just said I was relocating to Mars. Who? A mentor. Someone from the incubator program I got into. Dead silence. Ethan, who just happened to be walking by, stopped. Inca what? I sighed. Startup incubator. They help founders scale. Oh, he said, pretending to play it cool. Like Shark Tank, but quieter? Not the worst analogy. Still, the article had shifted the energy in the house. Overnight, I wasn't the overlooked second son. I was a potential golden ticket. Suddenly, everyone was in my garage. Dad told me I should slap on a little display so people know it's running. Mom insisted the logo needed more pop. Ethan even printed off some fake spreadsheet to show me how he could track synergy trends, which was clearly ripped off a marketing blog. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so pathetic. Except it wasn't just pathetic. Because one evening, I walked in to find Ethan alone in the garage, crouched over my prototype shelf, phone out, snapping pictures. What are you doing? I asked, trying to keep my tone even. He jumped. Oh, nothing. Just wanted to show a couple friends. Maybe get you some exposure. I walked right over and deleted the photos myself. His jaw tightened, but he didn't say a word. Not then. Later that night, though, came the real hit. I opened my inbox to see a notification from a startup forum I'd joined months back. New thread in DIY tech kits by user, Max Innovates. I clicked it. There it was, plain as day. A post titled Coming Soon, Modular DIY PC Kits. From our family to yours. And right beneath, photos of my builds. My layouts. My kits. Just with a shiny new name slapped on them. Quarkrate. A family-powered innovation project by Ethan, last name. I stared at the screen, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. Family-powered? The only thing Ethan ever powered was the blender when he whipped up protein shakes he never bothered to clean. I stormed straight to his room, didn't even knock. He looked up, grinning like he'd just secured peace in the Middle East. Hey, saw you saw the post. What is that? I demanded. He leaned back, casual. Just a teaser, relax. It's not like I said you weren't involved. You posted my work. Without permission. Bro, we're family, he said, like that word erased theft. We're stronger together. Think about it. I handle marketing, you handle your nerd stuff, we split it down the middle. Mom and Dad already love the name. Quarkrate. Catchy, right? I didn't answer. Not with words. I just walked out. Back to the garage. Locked every cabinet. Encrypted every drive. Changed every single password. Then I drafted a cease and desist. To my own brother. Typed it. Printed it. Hand-delivered it. He laughed in my face. Bro, you're serious? Dead serious. You think that's gonna stop me? He smirked. No, but I knew what would. I sent everything to my contact at the tech blog. Timestamps, screenshots, prototypes. I forwarded the same packet to Ethan's school. Because guess what? Passing off stolen IP as your own while using student resources? That's academic fraud. By morning, the post vanished. Ethan didn't. He stormed into the garage while I was packaging kits, eyes blazing. You reported me to the school? I protected my work, I said, steady. You're unbelievable. No, Ethan. I'm just done letting you cash checks on work you never touched. That was the real split. Not just between me and him, but between me and the fantasy my parents had built for years. The one where Ethan was the shining star and I was the shadow. They couldn't take it. They begged me to forgive, to be the bigger person, to keep it in the family. But Recor? Recor wasn't family-owned. It was family-proof, and I was just getting started. A week passed since Ethan's stunt, the fake company, the stolen photos, the family-powered nonsense. I thought things had calmed down. Wrong. They regrouped. Ethan slunk back to campus, ego bruised, phone suspiciously wiped clean. No comment. But now my parents stepped in. They hated being out of the loop, especially once whispers started spreading. One of Mom's Pilates friends heard about me from her son, a TA at a boot camp, who mentioned some scrappy modular startup run by that Ridgeview kid. Suddenly, Mom decided I needed help. And by help, she meant control. Thursday morning, I had a shipping deadline for a school pilot kit and a Zoom call lined up with a nonprofit in Vancouver. That's when I heard the knock. Opened the door. There they were, standing side by side like real estate agents about to pitch me a foreclosure. Mom held a thick binder. Dad clutched a travel mug and forced a smile, the kind you make before telling someone their dog ran off. We want to talk, Mom said. About what? I asked flatly. About your future, she answered. I sighed and stepped aside, mostly because I didn't feel like arguing while holding a hot soldering iron. They walked in like tourists, heads turning, eyes scanning every box, every wire, every label, like they were about to draft a Yelp review. Then Mom dropped it. We've been talking, she said, flipping open the binder like it was scripture. And we think it's time to make this a real business. I blinked. It is a real business. Dad nodded. Sure, but what we mean is, with a proper structure. A family LLC, Mom announced. We'll manage the finances, keep everything organized, and you can just focus on your little builds. My little builds. I turned toward her. So basically, you want me to hand over ownership, do you? Don't be dramatic, she said, her voice dripping with that condescending calm that made me want to flip the table. We'd all benefit. It's ours, after all. Ours. I repeated. Yes, she said breezily. We gave you the garage, the roof over your head, that old PC. Even if it was outdated, it got you started. I nearly laughed. Instead, I reached into a drawer, pulled out a folder, and dropped a document onto the workbench. My sole proprietorship certificate. Recore was already registered. Under my name. Their faces went rigid. Mom blinked like she'd been slapped. When did you do this? Months ago. You didn't tell us. You didn't ask. Dad set his mug down hard enough to thud. Son, he said, tone shifting to stern authority, you're in over your head. You've got something promising, sure, but you don't know how the world works yet. Let us help. No, Dad. You don't want to help, you want to own it. Mom's voice cut sharp. You're being ungrateful. And there it was. The family motto. Be grateful. Grateful for being ignored. Grateful for the scraps. Grateful for the attention that only arrived once the outside world had already validated me. I leaned back against the bench and let the silence settle before saying evenly, I don't need a family LLC. I need space to work. Then maybe it's time you start paying rent, Dad said, his tone turning cold, stiff, corporate. I smiled. I already do. Check the mortgage statement. That landed. Hard. Because they didn't know. 2 months back, I'd started sending money directly toward the mortgage. Quietly. Just to keep peace. Now, I wasn't sure I cared to keep doing it. Is that supposed to impress us? Dad asked, though his face told a different story. No. It's supposed to remind you I'm not your intern. They left without another word. But before Mom walked out, she muttered under her breath, Ethan would have handled this differently. And she was right. Ethan would have handed it all over. I wouldn't. To make sure there weren't any more surprise visits, I installed a keypad lock on the garage door. That same weekend, something wild happened. The nonprofit in Vancouver? They loved the pilot kits. They wanted 100 more. And they invited me to present Recore at a youth tech summit. Flight. Hotel. All covered. I stared at the email for a long time before calling the one person I knew would understand. My old CS teacher, Mr. Groves. He was the first person who ever told me I had potential, back when I'd landed detention for hacking the school printer and making it blast MIDI music during tests. He picked up on the second ring. You finally going pro? He asked. Looks like it. About time, he said. And just like that, I felt something inside shift. No more hiding in garages. No more justifying myself to people who only looked when they thought they could use me. It was time to take Recore beyond this house. Way beyond. 3 weeks later, I stepped onto a conference stage in a Vancouver hotel ballroom. Behind me were 2 giant banners. One had my name alongside the Recore logo. The other displayed a quote pulled from my Reddit post. Innovation isn't always polished. And they were right. I wasn't polished. I still used zip ties to hold some prototypes together. I still shipped out of my garage. My first batch of business cards even had my Venmo handle printed because I hadn't figured out invoicing yet. But that morning, I stood in front of 600 educators, engineers, coders, and founders. I showed slides. I shared results. I got an unexpected round of applause when I explained how every Recore kit was built from discarded school and nonprofit parts. Repurposed, cleaned, rebuilt. I closed with one line. I wasn't given much, but I was given enough to build something better. The applause carried longer than I thought it would. Backstage, One of the summit organizers handed me a lanyard. "Congrats," she said, slipping the lanyard over my neck. "You're one of 5 people selected for direct funding interviews." I blinked. Funding? Yep. Up to 100 grand. Non-equity. Just support. My hands actually trembled. A few hours later, I was sitting in a quiet hotel lounge, choking down bad coffee while waiting to meet 2 potential donors. One from a youth tech fund, the other from a hardware accelerator. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "You at that nerd conference?" Mom saw a tweet. "She's freaking out. Dad says we need to talk." LOL. I ignored it. 5 minutes later, another buzz. A screenshot this time. My name. My face. A picture of the conference banner. But not from a tech outlet. From my mother's Facebook. The caption, "So proud of our brilliant son. Always knew he'd do something amazing with his tech skills. Hashtag family business, hashtag Recore. Family business." I almost spit coffee on my laptop. This from the same woman who told me to be grateful when she handed me a prehistoric PC. The same woman who wanted me to sign everything over weeks ago. And now she was online claiming credit like it had been hers all along. The comments were even worse. "You must be so proud. We always knew he was destined for greatness. When are you launching in the States? Excited to support your family's venture." I closed the app. Didn't reply. Didn't block. Didn't comment. Instead, that night, I quietly updated Recore's About page. Added a section called Founding Story. It spelled out the busted PC, the ignored dinners, the silence that lasted until success showed up. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The words spoke for themselves. And apparently, people back home got the message. The next day, during the networking session after my panel, a woman tapped my shoulder. "Hey, you're Mason, right?" "Yeah. I'm Jill. My brother lives in Ridgeview. He sent me your story," said, and I quote, "The kid who got tossed the junk PC just got a standing ovation in Vancouver." I laughed. She grinned. "Anyway, I work with a district in Colorado. 12 schools for 1,000 students. We'd love to pilot your kits. We'll fund your travel." She handed me her card, and I just stood there surrounded by booths pitching million-dollar apps and toothbrushes with AI, holding an invitation from someone who wanted to invest in kids who got the scraps. That's when it hit me. I hadn't just built a business. I'd built proof. Proof that you don't need a shiny MacBook or a family cheering squad to count. You just need a broken PC, a soldering iron, and a reason to keep moving. When I got back from Vancouver, the house felt staged. Mom was in the kitchen, chopping salad like she was auditioning for a cooking show. 3 plates already set. Ethan slid out of the hallway the moment I walked in. "Hey, world traveler," he smirked. "Heard you crushed it." Before I could answer, Dad jumped in with his own performance. How proud they were, how everyone at church was buzzing, how we should sit down soon and talk expansion, and how Ethan had some ideas for the next phase of Recore. I didn't sit, didn't even take off my jacket, just walked to the garage. Except it wasn't the garage anymore. It had been scrubbed, reorganized. My prototype table shoved to the back, bins moved. And in the middle, a new folding table, a notepad with Ethan's name scrawled on it, and a ring light aimed perfectly at the workspace. I spun around. "Why did you touch my workspace?" Mom didn't even blink. "It's not just yours, Mason. It's the garage." Dad added, "Ethan needed space. He's planning some pitch content." Ethan leaned on the doorway, smug. "Just shooting a few concept videos. You know, for Recore's next phase." He paused, grinning. "Might throw in a few clips of you, me, and that first prototype. Real origin story vibes." That's when I laughed. Not sarcastic, just steady. "You were never in the origin story." Ethan blinked, thrown for once. Dad shot up like I'd just insulted the flag. "Mason, this attitude." "No," I cut in. "We're not doing that." Mom crossed her arms. "We're trying to help. By hijacking my space. By filming some fake narrative?" I asked. "You're being ungrateful," she snapped. And there it was, the family motto. Be grateful. I pulled out my phone, opened a folder, and held up the screen. A video from the Vancouver pilot. Kids building Recore kits. One of them said, "My brother told me I was dumb. Now I'm showing him how to code." I looked straight at them. You know what no one said? My family made it possible. Then I walked back into the garage, dragged my table forward, pulled down their signs, flipped the ring light to face the wall, and taped a note inside the door. Not a family business. Not a group project. Not for sale. 2 days later, I boxed up every prototype and file and left for Colorado. Changed my shipping address. Paid off the rest of the mortgage. Then I called the bank. "Hi," I said. "I'd like to remove 2 co-signers from the contribution agreement. Are you the primary payer?" "Yep. Been that way for 5 months." They processed it in 24 hours. On day 6, Mom texted me, "Why does the mortgage statement say 0 due from us?" I replied, "Because I'm done investing in ungrateful partners." A few weeks after I'd moved operations out of the house, an email landed from a production facility in Oregon. They'd seen a Record kit in a school video and wanted to know if I'd thought about scaling for national distribution. I hadn't, not seriously, until then. We set up a call. I showed them parts lists, DIY manuals, modular schematics. They showed me cost breakdowns and warehouse capacity. By the end of the week, there was a tentative deal on the table. Record wasn't just a garage project anymore. It was a brand. I didn't post about it. Didn't brag. Didn't gloat. But of course my parents found out. They always did. The same woman who forgot my birthday once set up a Google alert for Record Tech founder. I knew because I got an email from a local reporter. A family-focused piece on innovation and parental support. Subject line: "Your mom said you'd be open to interviewing together." I sent back one sentence. That must have been my business partner's evil twin. A day later, Mom called. An actual call. Not a text. Not an email. She dove in like we hadn't gone weeks without speaking. "We just think it'd be nice to celebrate this together. You've done so much. We're proud." "You told a reporter we'd interview together," I said. Silence. Then, "Well, we just wanted to be included." "That's not wrong, is it?" "No," I said. "But taking credit for something you try to steal, that is." She sighed. "You've changed." "Yeah," I replied. "So have the locks." The next day, Ethan texted, "Okay, but if you ever do need marketing help, I'm down. Send me your pitch deck. I'll boost it." I sent him a PDF. 1 page. Black background. White text. Record has no open roles for liars. Haven't heard from him since. Now I work out of a small office in Boulder with a team of 4 real people who believed in the mission from the start. We've shipped more than 2,000 kits to underfunded schools in 3 states. Sometimes people ask about my origin story. I keep it short. I started with a broken PC and nobody cheering. Because sometimes that's all you need. Not applause, not permission, just a reason. And a screwdriver.